Accessibility is a really important topic in website design that unfortunately doesn't get enough focus and energy and investment. And even when it's a subject of conversation, it tends to be just that and not necessarily the follow through that's required. Now, accessibility is, of course, important because by rights, everybody should have access to the internet and the information that's there. And, of course, accessibility is primarily focused on addressing the needs of people with impaired ability to perceive or understand the content as others do. So things that are, relatively speaking, low-hanging fruit that everybody should do are ensuring that their colors and fonts have the right levels of contrast and the right size, and those two things affect one another, by the way, so that the widest range of people with the widest range of sighted ability can read what's on their site. The next thing that's really, really important is to think about, from a code and from a metadata perspective, doing as much as we can to ensure that people who are using other forms of device or technology to consume our website, screen readers, for example, can indeed enjoy, ideally, all the content that we've laid out, for our audience. There's obviously levels of accessibility, often referred to in the A, AA, AAA range, and I recognise that going up a level requires investment. Unfortunately, it takes more time and it takes more effort, and therefore it is not fair to expect all businesses to strive for AAA level accessibility. I think it's important that we recognise that, and I think it's only fair that we recognise that. But it is, I think, really important to not simply talk about accessibility, but to build basic accessibility into your processes, if you're someone who's creating, like us, creating websites, for others. And as a business that's, producing a new website or seeking to procure a new website, to really think about the level of accessibility that you want achieved, and to request it and to invest in it, because it won't come free of charge, unfortunately. But it's important that we take into account as many people as possible when we're creating for the web. It's becoming so dominant in purchasing, in the way that we work. It's not really feasible to not put accessibility into the work that we do. So at Blend, we saw that there was room to learn more about accessibility, and we went through a process of training, which was really, really informative and valuable, because unless you need to, you most likely won't ever use the tools that people with challenges accessing the web will use. And it's not until you try to use a screen reader that you understand what that can be like, when it's good and bad in terms of the implementation. So we educated ourselves and our teams about what accessibility means from an end user perspective, and we've evolved our code and our approach to ensure that there's a baseline there that we're happy with, and that customers can really, really benefit. And we can, of course, push it to that higher level if we're required. I see some fairly flippant remarks about accessibility out there in the web community, and I don't feel like they're necessarily always, if even often, followed through to the level that you might take away from some of the statements that you see, but we believe it's really important, so we put it in place. So for every brand that we work on, we will typically look at a web accessibility matrix that A, shows us, and B, enables us to dial in the accessibility of typography in terms of both the font size and the acceptable font size in different color combinations, because of course the web demands that you use different font color on different backgrounds, and there's potentially a limitless combination of those. the issue is that many of those combinations won't pass accessibility standards. So you have to know on background A using font color B, what's the minimum acceptable size that I can show the font, use typography, and it have enough contrast to be readable at that size. So, we take effort to ensure that every color combination and font size is tested and and passes before we allow its use in the websites that we build. And that's a really important foundation or cornerstone in ensuring that the whole website is accessible. Because if you stick to those acceptable font combinations, then it carries over the whole site, and you don't have to worry about that so much. You can then move on to the other challenges.